Hey everyone, welcome to Life Reflections. Today I'm sharing a life story that might just hit home for you. If you enjoy it, give it a thumbs up, drop a comment with your thoughts, and hit that subscribe button to join me for more moments that matter. Let's dive in.
This Christmas Eve, I was handed a paper plate and sent to eat dinner in a cold, dusty garage. They said, "She's used to scraps." And for the first time, I didn't cry. I smiled. I sat down with my kids. And I thought, maybe, just maybe, this was the last time I'd ever beg for a seat at a table that was never built for me. What I didn't know was that a black limousine was already pulling into the driveway. And inside that limo was a woman who wasn't here to see my perfect sister or her polished life. She came for me. This is the story of how being pushed into the garage led me straight into the spotlight. And if you've ever been made to feel small, unwanted, or invisible, this story is for you. Because sometimes, the place they try to hide you is exactly where your miracle finds you. They thought they humiliated me by putting me in the garage. Instead, they handed me my spotlight. At first, I didn't even flinch. I took the paper plate my sister shoved into my hands, smiled through the shame burning my cheeks, and led my children through the side door like it was the most natural thing in the world. As if being treated like an afterthought, an inconvenience, was just another Thursday night for us, not Christmas Eve. The garage door creaked open, heavy and cold against my fingers. The smell hit first: motor oil, stale cardboard, the sharp metallic tang of neglect. A folding table leaned drunkenly against the far wall, its surface scratched and sticky. Two dented metal chairs and a plastic crate stood nearby, arranged like some twisted parody of a holiday feast. I should have cried. I should have raged. Instead, I did what life had trained me to do. I made it work. Sophie, my 9-year-old, clutched her tiny plate with both hands, looking around like maybe, just maybe, there was some mistake. Maybe the real party was waiting for us inside. Maybe her grandmother would call her back, laugh it off, say, "Silly me. Of course you belong inside." But the door stayed shut. I knelt and straightened Sophie's dress, smoothing the wrinkles, brushing the imaginary dust off her sparkly shoes. "You okay, baby?" I whispered. She nodded, too brave, too grown up for her years. Liam, my 12-year-old, set his jaw in that way he does when he's fighting emotions he doesn't know how to name yet. "Let's just eat," he muttered. So we did. Plastic forks scraping paper plates. No music. No laughter. Just the sound of our breathing and the distant clinking of crystal glasses from the real dining room. They didn't even bring us a bread basket. As I chewed my cold slice of turkey, staring at the cracked concrete floor, I wondered, how many years had I spent trying to earn a place at their table? How many holidays had I smiled until my face ached, swallowed insults wrapped in fake smiles, played the good daughter, the good sister, the good little afterthought? And for what? So I could be exiled to the garage like a stray dog looking for scraps? I watched my children, my beautiful, strong, resilient children, picking at their food with quiet dignity. I felt something inside me fracture. Something raw and old and tired. I realized I was done. Done begging. Done shrinking. Done accepting just enough love. And that's when the headlights slashed across the driveway. Not a regular car. Not a latecomer's SUV. A limousine. A black, gleaming limousine, humming low like a sleeping giant, gliding past the perfectly manicured hedges, the wreath-bedecked front door, the golden lights spilling from the mansion's windows. It didn't stop at the front. It rolled past the guests, past the laughter, past the dining room that didn't have room for us. It stopped at the garage. For a second, none of us moved. Inside the house, I saw silhouettes shift behind the curtains. I imagined the whispers, "Who's that? Who ordered a limo? Is that for Brad's firm?" The car door opened, slow, deliberate. A man in a sleek black suit stepped out first, scanned the driveway, then turned back and opened the back door. And out stepped a woman. Tall. Elegant. regal in a way that had nothing to do with diamonds or designer logos. She wore a navy blue wool coat that caught the light, her silver hair swept back in a bun that said she answered to no one. She didn't even glance at the front door. She turned, heels clicking sharply against the driveway, and walked straight toward the garage. Toward me. Toward us. Liam stood up so fast his chair scraped against the concrete. Sophie squeezed my hand until it hurt. My heart thundered in my ears. The woman stopped a few feet away, hands folded gracefully in front of her, and smiled. "Excuse me," she said, voice smooth as velvet. "I'm looking for Samantha Monroe." It took me a second to remember that was me. I had grown so used to being invisible that the sound of my own name startled me. I'm Sam," I said, voice cracking. The woman's smile deepened. "My name is Eleanor Winters. I've been searching for you." Behind her, the limo idled quietly, a surreal hum against the stillness of the night. Inside the house, I could feel the shift. The curtains trembled. The party paused. Jessica's voice, thin and brittle, floated through the open window. "Who is she talking to?" "Me. She's talking to me." For the first time in my life, someone wasn't overlooking me, wasn't stepping around me, wasn't pretending I didn't exist. They came for me. Eleanor Winters, founder of Voices Rising, a foundation that lifted up stories that mattered, had read the words I scribbled into a battered notebook late at night after putting my kids to bed. She had found the heart I poured into every blog post no one in my family ever bothered to read. She had seen my worth before I dared to claim it myself. And she wasn't here for my sister's perfect life. Or my mother's polished performances. She was here for the woman eating turkey on a crate in the garage. For the woman they called used to scraps. I didn't move at first. Not because I didn't want to. But because I didn't know how. When you've spent your whole life being the afterthought, the plus one, the almost good enough, and then suddenly someone looks at you like you are the whole point, it paralyzes you. You don't trust it. You wait for the punchline. You wonder if it's another cruel joke and somehow, you miss the memo. Sophie tugged at my sleeve gently, grounding me. Liam stood beside me, his jaw tight, his body tense like he was ready to shield me if this woman meant harm. I stepped forward, heart hammering against my ribs. "I'm Sam Monroe," I said again, a little stronger this time. Eleanor smiled, not the patronizing, tight-lipped smiles I was used to from Jessica's friends. Not the pity smiles from people who thought being a single mom was a tragedy. It was a smile of recognition. "I know," she said simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Behind her, the Christmas lights twinkled across the perfectly manicured lawn, casting soft glows on the rows of parked luxury cars. I thought about how many times I'd walked past those cars, past those perfect lives, trying to pretend I wasn't different. But here, right here, the difference was the reason she had found me. "I read your work years ago," Eleanor continued, voice calm and clear against the cold night air. "You wrote about hope, about resilience, about survival without bitterness. You wrote about holding on to light when everything around you was built to snuff it out." My throat tightened. I remembered those nights. Those desperate, lonely nights after my husband walked out, leaving me with 2 kids, $47 in the bank, and a mountain of bills. I remembered how I wrote because I didn't know what else to do with the fear, the exhaustion, the endless ache of being unseen. I never thought those words would leave the tiny screen of my second-hand laptop. I never thought anyone important would read them. Yet here stood Eleanor Winters, important by every definition, quoting me back to myself like my voice mattered. "You have a way of making people feel less alone," she said. And right now, the world needs that more than ever. Inside the house, the party had gone eerily silent. I could feel their confusion, their anger simmering just beneath the white linen and crystal glasses. Jessica peered through the curtain, eyes narrow with disbelief. Brad loomed behind her, his Bluetooth earpiece flashing blue. Margaret, my mother, sipped her wine stiffly, refusing to look toward the garage. None of them moved. None of them stepped outside. Because stepping outside would mean acknowledging me. Acknowledging that the woman in the limo hadn't come for their perfect performances, but for the mess they thought was disposable. I should have been furious. But I wasn't. I was free. "Ms. Winters," I said, voice shaking, "why me?" She smiled again, that patient, wise smile. "Because you've lived the truth. And because you know how to tell it." In that moment, all the years of being invisible, all the holidays spent smiling through insult, all the times I swallowed my pride to keep the peace, it all fell away like dust. I wasn't invisible. I was simply in the wrong room. "You don't need to decide tonight," Eleanor said kindly. "But I would love for you to join our team. Speak at the Voices Rising Summit this spring. Share your story. We'll cover travel, childcare, whatever you need. And there's a publishing opportunity if you're interested." Publishing. Speaking. The words didn't seem real. The life she was offering didn't seem real. For so long, I had measured success by scraps, by being tolerated, not celebrated. I had begged for a folding chair in their dining room when all along, I was meant to build a table of my own. Sophie leaned into me, her tiny hand curling around my pinky. "Mom," she whispered, eyes wide, shining, "say yes." Liam didn't say anything. But he didn't have to. The way he straightened his shoulders, the way he tilted his chin up slightly, he was giving me permission to. Permission to stop surviving. Permission to start living. I nodded, tears burning behind my eyes. "I would be honored," I said. Eleanor extended her hand. "No clipboard. No contract. No hoops to jump through. Just trust." I shook her hand. And in that moment, in that cold, dusty garage, with my children watching, I stepped out of the life they built for me and into the life I was meant to live. That night, as the limo pulled away, I didn't even glance back at the house. I didn't need their approval anymore. I wasn't theirs to approve. I was my own. And for the first time, that was enough. The ride from the garage wasn't just a drive, it was a crossing. One moment, I was a woman piecing together her dignity on a broken folding chair. The next, I was a woman someone powerful had crossed town in a limousine to find. But leaving wasn't the end of the story. Not even close. Because freedom, real freedom, doesn't just come wrapped in gratitude. It also arrives with grief. As the limousine slid through the sleepy streets, the city lights blurring like stars, I found myself gripping the edge of the seat too tightly. Eleanor chatted with the kids, asking them about school, their favorite subjects, what they wanted to be when they grew up. They answered, shy at first, then warmer, like flowers turning toward a long-awaited sun. But me? I sat there, smiling, nodding, and inside, a storm raged. I wasn't just leaving a house that night. I was leaving decades of hopes, stitched by hand and heartbreak, unraveled by one cold holiday after another. The fight wasn't outside anymore. The real conflict was inside me. Could I really believe I was enough without their approval? Could I truly step into this new opportunity without carrying the old chains with me, the voice that said, "You'll never be good enough. You'll never be real enough. You'll never be them." Because the truth was, part of me still wanted to turn around. Still wanted my mother to run after the car, tears in her eyes, begging me to stay. Still wanted Jessica to admit she had been cruel. Still wanted someone, anyone, inside that house to say, "We see you now." But they didn't. And deep down, I knew. They never would. This wasn't a story where the villains realized their mistakes. This wasn't a holiday movie where broken families magically heal with a hug over spiced cider. This was real life. Messy, imperfect, beautiful in its brutal honesty. The only apology I would get was the one I gave myself. The only permission to rise was the one I had to grant. At dinner downtown, Eleanor led us into a warm, golden-lit restaurant where servers greeted her like an old friend. Tablecloths soft as clouds. Bread baskets steaming with real, fresh rolls. Waiters who knelt to talk to Sophie at eye level and called Liam sir like he was a king. It was everything the garage wasn't. Warm. Welcoming. Real. As Eleanor and I talked business, keynote dates, publishing ideas, travel plans, I caught Liam watching me from across the table. Not in the guarded, anxious way he used to, but with something deeper. Something stronger. Pride. He saw me now, not as the mom who bent over backwards to make things okay, not as the woman always apologizing for taking up space, but as someone who belonged. Someone who mattered. That should have been enough to quiet the storm inside me. But it wasn't. Not yet. Because just like healing a broken bone, healing a broken identity aches worse before it gets better. Later that night, back at our apartment, after I'd tucked Sophie into bed with promises of a Christmas morning filled with hot cocoa and homemade waffles, Liam hovered in the kitchen. "Mom," he said, voice hesitant, "can I ask you something?" I nodded, heart already bracing for whatever came next. "Why did they treat us like that?" His voice cracked at the edges, like a boy on the edge of becoming a man, like someone who needed an answer to decide what kind of man he would be. I opened my mouth and realized I didn't know what to say. Because how do you explain to your child that some people, even people you love, can't love you back the way you deserve? How do you explain that brokenness isn't always loud and obvious? Sometimes it's dressed in designer sweaters and manicured lawns. Sometimes it smells like lemon polish and sounds like backhanded compliments. Sometimes it laughs at the head of the table while it banishes you to the garage. And sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are the very ones who teach you to doubt your own worth. I knelt in front of Liam, so we were eye to eye. "I don't know why they did it," I said honestly. "But I know it wasn't because of you. Or Sophie. Or me." I placed my hand on his chest, feeling the strong thud of his heartbeat beneath my palm. It was about them. About their emptiness, not our value. He nodded slowly, absorbing it like a sponge, the kind of lesson schools don't teach and textbooks don't cover. Then he said something I'll never forget. "I'm glad we were in the garage." I blinked, confused. "Why, baby?" He smiled, a slow, knowing smile. "Because that's where the limo found us." And just like that, the storm inside me broke. All the longing. All the second-guessing. All the useless hoping for people to change. It wasn't about what we lost when we walked away. It was about what we gained by leaving. Freedom. Dignity. A future where my kids would never have to wonder if they were enough. Because they are. And so am I. The morning after Christmas Eve didn't feel like a new chapter. Not right away. It felt fragile. Like something you cup in your hands, terrified it might blow away if you exhale too hard. The world outside didn't know anything had changed. The sky was still a muted gray. The sidewalk still dusted with half-melted snow. Neighbors still pulled garbage cans to the curb, still waved distractedly as they herded sleepy children into SUVs. But something inside our little apartment was different. Something inside me was different. For the first time, the silence wasn't heavy. It was clean. It was ours. Liam and Sophie unwrapped their tiny gifts with giggles and wide eyes, a second-hand sketchbook, a thrifted soccer ball, a stuffed animal with one ear slightly crooked. Nothing expensive. Nothing flashy. But everything was chosen with care. Love isn't measured in price tags. It's measured in presence. And for the first Christmas in forever, I was fully present, not counting down the minutes until someone insulted me, not scanning faces for approval that would never come, not shrinking smaller and smaller to fit a mold I was never meant to occupy. 2 days later, I stood on a stage for the first time in my life. The Voices Rising Summit wasn't held in a stuffy conference room or a sterile hotel ballroom. It was hosted in a sunlit atrium downtown, all glass ceilings and living walls, overflowing with women who carried their battle scars like badges. CEOs, teachers, activists, single moms, students, survivors. No one cared about last names here, or zip codes, or resumes polished to hide the bruises. They cared about truth, about stories, about the messy, unfiltered reality of surviving and still choosing joy. When it was my turn to speak, I nearly tripped walking up the stairs. Not because I was clumsy, though, let's be honest, I am. But because for a second, a voice in my head hissed, "You don't belong up there. Go back to the garage. Old wounds die slow deaths." But I caught myself, straightened my shoulders, clutched the microphone so hard my knuckles went white. I scanned the crowd, a sea of faces, some smiling, some solemn, some tearful before I even spoke. And then I found them. Liam, Sophie, Eleanor, sitting together in the front row, beaming, believing, waiting. So I spoke. I spoke about the garage, about the years of trying to be good enough, about the ache of invisibility, about how sometimes the deepest cruelty isn't being told you're not wanted, it's being treated like your absence wouldn't even be noticed. I spoke about the night the limousine came, not as a rescue, but as a reminder that sometimes your miracle doesn't come because you fought harder. It comes because you finally stopped fighting for the wrong things. I told them about Liam's words, about how sometimes you have to be exiled before you find your entrance. And as I spoke, I saw it happening. Faces shifted, eyes widened. People leaned forward, clutching their notebooks to their chests, nodding so hard I thought some might fall out of their chairs. Not because my story was unique, but because it wasn't. Because everyone in that room had eaten their Thanksgiving dinner in someone's garage, metaphorically or literally. Everyone had been overlooked, dismissed, shoved aside. Everyone had waited for someone else to give them a seat at the table, and finally realized they had to build their own. When I finished, the room erupted. Not in polite, obligatory applause. In roaring, thundering, standing ovation kind of applause. The kind that shakes your bones. The kind you feel vibrating in your ribs long after the clapping stops. I stumbled back from the microphone, breathless, overwhelmed, clutching my heart like it might shatter from the sheer bigness of it all. Liam was on his feet, cheering. Sophie was crying happy tears, clapping so hard her palms turned red. Eleanor caught my gaze and mouthed two simple words. "You're home." And just like that, I knew. I wasn't the woman who got sent to the garage anymore. I was the woman who turned that garage into a launching pad. I was the woman who rose. I was the woman who told the truth and set herself free. Later, when the summit ended and I was tucked into a corner sipping lukewarm coffee, women lined up just to talk to me. Not to congratulate me. To thank me. I thought I was alone, one whispered, tears glittering on her cheeks. "You said the thing I've never been brave enough to say out loud," another admitted, squeezing my hand. "You made me believe I don't have to apologize for being me," someone else said, voice shaking. I hugged every single one of them. Because they weren't strangers. They were mirrors. Reflections of the girl I had been, the one who thought being small enough would make her lovable. The one who thought maybe, just maybe, if she smiled big enough, worked hard enough, stayed silent long enough, she would finally be enough. As I rode the elevator back to my hotel room that night, still clutching the bouquet they had pressed into my arms, Liam turned to me. "Mom," he said, voice steady, "you were never supposed to fit in that house." I blinked back tears. He was right. That house, that life, those people, they had built a cage out of expectations and called it love. But love doesn't shrink you. Love expands you. And now, finally, I was expanding. The morning after the summit felt still. Not quiet like emptiness. Quiet like peace. I woke up in the hotel room, a real bed, real linen sheets, soft morning light spilling through heavy curtains, and for the first time in a long time, there was no tightness in my chest, no invisible checklist running through my mind about who I needed to impress, how small I needed to make myself. Just breath. Just being. Liam and Sophie were curled up on the other bed, tangled in the fluffy white comforter, their faces soft and easy in sleep. I stared at them for a long moment, memorizing the way peace looked when it settled onto people who deserved it. And that's when it hit me. I had broken the cycle. For years, I thought survival was enough. Thought staying quiet, staying grateful for scraps, staying invisible would somehow earn me love. But real love, real worth, doesn't come from enduring mistreatment. It comes from refusing to accept less than you deserve. By standing up. By walking away. By daring to believe you are enough without their permission. I thought about my mother, sipping her Chardonnay, pretending she didn't see. About Jessica, handing me a paper plate like it was an honor. About all the nights I spent wondering what I could fix inside myself to make them choose me. And I realized there was never anything wrong with me. Their inability to love me the right way wasn't my failure. It was theirs. It always had been. And now, finally, I wasn't carrying their failure on my back anymore. Later that week, back at home, I got a package in the mail. A thick envelope, embossed with the Voices Rising logo. Inside was the publishing contract Eleanor had mentioned, real, tangible proof that my voice, my story, my existence mattered. At the bottom of the letter, Eleanor had handwritten a single line. You were never scraps. You were always the feast. I sat at the kitchen table, the late afternoon sun painting stripes across the wood, and cried the kind of tears that come when the ache finally finds release. Not tears of sadness. Not even of anger. Tears of relief. Of validation. Of a long overdue homecoming to myself. Publishing the book was terrifying. It meant putting all the rawness, the nights I went to bed hungry so my kids could eat, the years spent apologizing for needing anything, the countless ways I made myself smaller, out into the world for strangers to see. It meant admitting I had been hurt. And it meant daring to show that healing was possible. But every step felt lighter than the last. Every word I wrote, every memory I stitched back together with honesty instead of shame, was a piece of the armor I was finally laying down. The first time I held the finished book in my hands, my knees buckled. More than scraps, bold black letters across a clean white cover. My name underneath. Not hidden. Not footnoted. Mine. I ran my fingers across the letters, breathing in the newness of it, the bigness of it. Liam peeked over my shoulder, whistling low. Dang, Mom. You're like a real author. Sophie danced around the living room, holding the book over her head like a trophy. My mom's famous, she sang. I laughed, a sound so full and unburdened I barely recognized it as mine. But it wasn't fame I felt. It was freedom. We celebrated in the way that mattered most. Home-cooked dinner. Blankets piled on the living room floor. Friends, real friends, who didn't care about resumes or Instagrammable moments. We ate on mismatched plates. We burned the garlic bread. We laughed until our stomachs hurt. And when someone asked, casually, why we weren't spending the holiday with family, I smiled and said, we are. Because family isn't who shares your blood. Family is who builds the table with you, even when the chairs don't match and the food isn't fancy. Family is who shows up. Who sees you. Who stays. Months later, I got a short text from Jessica. No apology. No ownership. Just. Saw your book. Congrats, I guess. I stared at the screen for a long moment, waiting for the familiar sting. Waiting for the old sadness to flood my chest. But it didn't come. I didn't feel rage, or longing, or even pity. I felt nothing. And it was the most beautiful nothing I had ever felt. Because healing isn't about getting the apology. It's about realizing you don't need it anymore. It's about building a life so full, so rooted, so rich with real love that their absence isn't a hole, it's a blessing. One night, after a long day of interviews and planning for my next speaking engagement, I found Sophie sitting at the kitchen table with a crayon in her hand. She was making a sign. At the top, in big block letters, she had written, "Our family rules." And underneath, "Everyone gets a seat. No one eats alone. Everyone's voice matters." I sat down beside her, blinking fast against the tears. She looked up at me and grinned. "We don't do garages, Mom. Only parties." And just like that, I realized the true payoff wasn't the book deal. It wasn't the speeches. It wasn't the applause. It was this. A little girl who knew, down to her bones, that she was worthy of being seen. A little boy who knew he didn't have to earn love by disappearing. A woman, me, who had finally come home to herself. Not because someone handed me a better chair. Not because someone finally opened the dining room door. But because I built my own table. And I made it big enough for anyone brave enough to believe they deserved to sit at it. If there's one truth this whole journey carved into my bones, it's this. You are not scraps. You never were. The way people treat you, the tables they refuse to set for you, the doors they slam in your face, the corners they try to shove you into, none of that defines you. Their blindness to your worth isn't a reflection of your value. It's a reflection of their own limits. They build walls because they are too small to hold your light. They offer you crumbs because they can't fathom the feast you deserve. And you can spend your whole life, your beautiful, powerful, one and only life, trying to convince them to see you. Trying to earn your seat at a table built to keep you out. Trying to shrink yourself into something palatable, something small enough to fit inside their fragile acceptance. But you will die starving at their feet if you do. Because some tables were never meant for you. Not because you aren't worthy, but because you were meant to build your own. Here's what I know now. You don't have to prove your worth to people who benefit from you doubting it. You don't have to wear your hunger like a badge of honor. You don't have to accept scraps and call it love. You are allowed to want more. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to demand a life where you are not an afterthought. You are allowed to build something so beautiful, so real, so rich with authenticity, that the people who once called you used to scraps have to watch you rise from behind the glass walls they built to keep you out. And the most incredible part? You won't even care if they're watching. Because you'll be too busy dancing at your own table. A table made of truth. Of resilience. Of unstoppable self-respect. There will be people. Good people. Real people. Who find your light and don't try to dim it. Who pull up a chair without you asking. Who bring their own stories, their own scars, their own songs. And together, you will create a life where nobody eats alone. Nobody has to apologize for existing. Nobody gets sent to the garage. Only love. Only space. Only abundance. So if you find yourself standing outside a closed door this year, if you're holding a paper plate, feeling small and forgotten, if you're sitting in a garage, wondering why love feels so cold, remember this. You were never supposed to fit in there. You were supposed to outgrow it. You were supposed to rise. You were supposed to build. You were supposed to become the kind of person who turns exile into empire, silence into song, rejection into revolution. You are not scraps. You are the feast. And trust me, the right people? They will find you. They will see you. Sometimes they even show up in a black limousine on a cold winter night, just to remind you. You were the main character all along.
That's it for today's story on Life Reflections. I'd love to hear your take. Drop a comment below with your thoughts or a story of your own. If you enjoyed this, give a like and subscribe to keep the reflections coming. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.